G'day, it's Mike here, and I'm doing a series on trim, sail trims. Previously I've done one on the jib on the DF65, and now today I'm looking at is the mainsail trim on the 65 and how we set up to maximize the boat's performance upwind and downwind. So what we're focusing here is the fast trim settings for the mainsail. These sorts of concepts can be used on any boats, whether they're big boats, small boats, radio control boats, or the different various classes which we use. But the terms which I'm going to talk about today are twist, and what that twist, what we talk about, what we mean by twist, the depth of the sail or shape of the sail, or another word for it is camber, but I'm going to use the word depth. The draft, which is if you measure an imaginary line between the front edge and the back edge of the sail, which is called the chord, but I'll just call that the imaginary line. That's called the draft, where the maximum depth of the sail is. And then we're looking at the angle of attack, and that angle of attack relates to the wind direction relative to the front edge of the mainsail. Before I do look at that, and in terms of mainsail setting up, what I wanted to do was concentrate on number 3 first, which is the main sheet bridle. And why that's important, particularly on the 65, is we want to minimize the amount of potential movements in the boat, so we've got some level of consistency when sailing these boats. And what I'm going to do is lift this up so hopefully you can see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the bridle. Okay, so what we're talking about here is the main sheet bridle, and there's lots of various discussions of where this main sheet bridle is. Basically, I set it around about a centimetre high, so that, and what I've done here is fixed this so that it doesn't rotate. So that's glued. That is glued. This fitting here, which it goes through, is glued. The bridle, which I have here, is set so that these bowsies nice and flat, so it reduces the risk of the main sheet when we ease the main sheet out. It reduces the risk of that catching on the edge. I also glue these bridles once I get into position, because these do move around a little bit. These bridles, these bowsies do occasionally move. So just to reduce the risk of them moving, I super glue the bowsie into one position. Now, the reason I do this is because what I want to do is limit the ability of the boom or the sheeting position to adjust. And so by having the bridle at a relatively high position, it reduces this main sheet. It reduces the distance between the main sheet and the boom turning position, and therefore reduces the amount of variation which you could possibly have if you had the bridle down lower. It seems to work for me anyway, but that's how I do it. So that just, it minimizes the chance of movement, and that's important. All right, so if we look at all the variations which we're talking about today, I'll just go through twist. And what does twist mean? If you focus on the sail, the mainsail, the twist is between this point here, this point here, and the clew. So that is an imaginary line between there, and the twist is the distance between that imaginary line and the actual sail. So in this situation, it's around about 10 mil or a finger's width. Okay, but that's how I measure twist. Okay, so depth. Depth is measured by the distance between the middle of the boom and the foot. The middle of the boom and the foot. To create an optimum shape in the sail, we have to set up the sail, and there's three elements to setting the sail up. That is, number one, the main luff tension, which is controlled by the Cunningham eye. Number two, the depth of the sail, which is controlled by the slider on the end of the boom. Number three, the amount of twist, which is controlled by your vang, the vang position. We'll go through each of these elements in terms of setting up your boat. We've talked about, obviously, the main sheet and the sheeting position. And we'll talk about that in terms of the angle of attack later on. But now, just to get our sail set up and running, what we'll look at is the elements which you need to look at. Now, these elements change depending on the breeze, the chop, the balance of the boat, and the mast position. We won't do mast position today. We'll look at that at a later stage. But very important, if we just look at the what we're trying to do is create shape in the sail. So the first thing we do is assess what the breeze is and determine whether what the Cunningham eye position should be. Should it be soft? Should it be tight? That will depend on the breeze. If it's a light breeze, we have a soft Cunningham eye. As the breeze increases, we generally tighten the Cunningham eye. The number two thing we do is we look at the boom slider and the depth. What we're doing is trying to create an aerofoil, which is similar to this. So we do that by moving the slider at the bottom of the boom and creating depth. Now, battens along here obviously straighten the back edge of the sail, but what we're doing here is creating depth to create an aerofoil to increase the amount of push the sail has. So number two is to alter that, and we start at roughly in light airs around about 35 millimeters, and we decrease that to around about between 10 and 15 millimeters as the breeze goes to the top level of the A+. We're looking at this the A+ at the moment. After we've done the shape or the depth of the sail, we review that by just having a look at it. Then we look at the twist. Now the twist is measured between the tack and the head and the amount that it drops off. So if you have an imaginary line between there and there, and we put that in the middle of the sail, roughly 15 millimeters is the starting point in light airs for the twist. Now, what is interesting is that a lot of boats which I see is they don't have a very tight main leach. They they have a lot of twist because it's easier to sail with a lot of twist because you don't have a weather helm. The effect of that is to reduce the amount of power, because as you pull the leech down, you increase your surface area and the power of the sail. So very important to remember in light airs in particular that having minimal twist, 15 mil or thereabouts, is probably the optimum position to start with. So what we've done here is we're just playing around with the boom position, lifting it and then dropping it, just to see what effect that would have. In light airs, it would be something like that. And in the heavier breezes, you'd move it out to around that. At that stage, you're probably losing a lot of the top of the sail, and it'd probably be better to go to the smaller sail at that stage. Over the 15 km/h to 20 km/h range is about the max for the A+. Once you've got the shape right, what's important is to get the twist right so that the sail is pointing on the back edge in line with the center line of the boat. What we've done is we've looked at the depth and the shape. We've looked at the twist. We've looked at making sure that when you're sailing you've got the angle correct. We've looked at the main sheet bridle. Now we're going to have a chat about finding the groove. Now, it's really important. One of the things which most people, you'll see them, a lot of people going backwards and forwards like that. And what is that? What are we trying to achieve there? What we're trying to achieve there is to mirror the jib slot or the jib leech with the main leech. What we're trying to do there, I don't know whether you can see this, but what I'm trying to do here is to mirror that jib leech and main leech. And what I do here is by tightening up the vang, I'm trying to mirror this leech line with the main leech. What we've done is we've mirrored the leech of the main and leech of the jib. The reason for doing this is to reduce the drag on the back edge of the mainsail. The back edge of the mainsail is, we have a vortex which is created there, and by mirroring this and having a clean slot, it reduces the amount of drag on the back edge of the mainsail. Evidence that the mainsail is stalling is where the telltales aren't lined up and aren't perpendicular. So when these are all lined up, that is maximizing your drive with this, with your settings, and the angle of attack is correct. What we've talked about is making sure that the angle of attack is correct and you've got the maximum power to generate a forward movement of the boat. What's really important is once you've established that position where your leech is matched with the jib leech, the main leech is matched with the jib leech, you find the groove, you find this angle which is right, and you get in that groove, and that maximizes your boat speed forward. It's really about getting a feel for the boat and making sure that you feel the boat's moving quickly through the water. You do that by comparisons of other boats and basically your history with the boat and understanding with that breeze what the speed of the boat should be going. Thanks for listening. I hope this helps you set up your mainsail so that you can maximize your boat's performance upwind. These settings obviously change depending on the breezes and the chop and the conditions, but it's a good starting point on which to build a fast boat. Look forward to seeing you on the water. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as we have oodles of information on how to set your boats up and get the maximum performance. Bye for now.